Hello, happy Thursday. I'm glad to be back with you. I hope everyone's doing okay. I'm Rebecca Kastl. I call myself the accidental mystic. I had a beautiful spiritual awakening that I call a spiritually transformative experience that was in my 20s. It lasted for 2 years. It was really close to a near-death experience. And I was going to just talk today. Every Thursday, I do these videos where I talk about different things I've thought about in my integration process. So my experience ended in 2008, and I spent a very long time thinking about it before I started talking about it. I started sharing about it in 2023 at the end, at IANDS, at the International Association for Near-Death Studies. It took me that long. A lot of us who have these kind of experiences are called to share about them. I think to be teachers for so many of y'all, I mean, I've learned from other experiencers so much, and I think we all learn from each other. But here's what happened. So when my experience ended, it was very, very beautiful. I can link one of my interviews that you might, if you don't know my story, you can watch, but you don't have to watch it, obviously, if you already know my story. When it ended, I really spent so long trying to figure out if it was real. Obviously the gut punch of being like having felt all that light and then it kind of stopping. And thinking maybe I just made it all up. Maybe I was nuts, but it was so like transformative and real and beautiful and loving that I finally accepted it. But for a long time, I was kind of in this denial place, which was a very easy place for me to go to because that's where I went after my trauma. So at age 13, my trauma happened and then it was like really bad. And honestly, it was really bad for about a year and a half, 2 years, which it really is wild that it did mimic that in my life later. But then once I realized, oh, okay, I just had to like put a lid on it basically for a while in my life before I started going to therapy. And when you turn off those experiences or you kind of they start to seem like distant dreams, and that's what happened with my trauma. And then when I basically had that was my MO, was just to be like, once my spiritual experience ended and I wasn't sure, I was like, well, maybe I made that up, and I just like closed the lid on it. And um, that was just really a coping mechanism because it was so much to try to process, even though I had my stepdad who came from a medicine tradition and verified a lot of my experiences and was very supportive and really happy that this had happened to me, and the shaman that I worked with. It was quite a lot to process. So during the time that I had closed the door on my spiritual experience as much as I was able to, I was still having psychic dreams. I was still like having these weird kind of things happen, but I was also not really fully integrated. I've read a lot of near-death experience books, and I know a lot of y'all find me and my friend Betty and other friends because you watch near-death experience YouTube or read the books. I didn't know at the time that there was NDE YouTube. I was just reading memoirs of people who'd had near-death experiences and thinking, wow, this is a lot like what happened to me, but I never died. I don't get, why is this so much like what happened to me, but I never died? And I would just read them and kind of devour them and become a little bit like weirdly obsessive about it. Maybe you understand. but but it was because I was trying to place what had happened to me in a context that made sense. Yes, I had the like shamanic from my stepdad in the medicine tradition. He wouldn't have considered himself at all shamanic. It was more just like he walked on the red road and he had, what he called like medicine in his family through his father. Um so it was like he was really keyed in when I started having all this stuff happening to me. But it was like there was that path that really these experiences really make sense in. But then there's also the near death path. And then there's also kind of like the religious like path. For me, it's like such a universal human experience. But ultimately, in the end, like I've felt most at home in the near death community. And it was really, I was reading these NDE books and kind of idolizing these people who were so brave to share their story. And then when I got really pushed, like I knew I was supposed to start sharing my story. And my stepdad and that shaman had told me separately I would be doing this, but he was like, you don't know. I didn't know what that meant. They told me I would be a teacher, I'd be popular. And I just was like, didn't understand what they meant. And also like, you don't know how that's going to happen. Like a lot of stuff in our lives, you don't know how it's going to come about. And then I just knew that I had to submit to speak at the IANS convention or conference, and I got accepted to speak in 2023. After never telling my story publicly, I basically I hadn't even told it in a small group. I just went on the stage and told it because it was and I busted through so many fears, but I still I still had some fear that I have been processing a lot better. But because when I first spoke at IANS in 2023, I was shaking. I couldn't, I think my voice was shaking. I was panicking, but I knew I had to do it and I did it. And now I keep doing this, but it was really cool to go and see some of my idols. So I've met many of my idols going to IANS. I'd read Eben Alexander's book. I met him. I had read Anita Moorjani's book. I met her. I have pictures with both of them. Peter Panagore, I'd read his book. And all of this was a little bit removed. It was I'm a regular person. I'm a speech therapist. And then I would secretly read these books. Um, Anyway, I've been thinking about how, with NDEs, your body dies, but I didn't physically ever die. And yet I had almost all of the same things that happen to people when they have NDEs. And I was going to actually go through the Greyson Scale. I don't know if y'all have heard of that, but it's the Greyson Scale for near-death experiences, and it's a ranking scale. It's out of 32 points. And it has almost everything that happened to me in my STE. And maybe you're going to find some things that you've gone through that is interesting for you to see. Okay, I had to pause it for a second. Could you tell? I'm back. I think I was talking about the Grayson scale and how even though, I didn't die, and yet I had this big NDE-like experience. And it's thinking about what should I call it? What is, what are the names we call these experiences? And maybe it'll make sense for you if you've had an out-of-body experience, if you've had a spiritually transformative experience, if you've had a near-death experience, or any just a spiritual awakening. I work with people all the time who have had moments of seeing angels or have had born-again experiences or moments of bliss. They've taken ayahuasca and had awakening experiences. And I just think these are very human. And the whole point is that we get out of our mental selves and we get reconnected to our spiritual selves. So because it's interesting that, I didn't die, but I had a trauma that was like a spiritual death and really caused me to be very far away from my real life. And again, that shaman said, when the physical world doesn't take care of you, the spiritual world does. And I really like that. So I'm going to go through the Grayson scale with you and tell you all the things that happened. And then you can say, maybe this happened to you too. Let me see. Here's my glasses. And I'm just going to go through a little bit of it because I didn't have everything, but I had definitely what he says at the end. If you have a score of over 7, it counts as an NDE for research purposes. And I definitely had that, but I didn't die. The whole point is I would love for there to be a codified research area of trauma and spiritual awakening. I've been thinking about that. I don't know if any of my psychologist or therapist friends knows, I know there's a lot of research about trauma, and I'm starting to kind of look more into maybe speaking with groups like that or working with that, but only the near-death experience community made a lot of sense to me because it was just so similar. Okay, so here's some of the things. Did time seem to speed up or slow down? Did it for you? It did for me in parts when I saw that timeline of my life, where my thoughts speeded up. No, I mean, I was still living my whole regular life. I just had all these spiritual things happen to me. Did scenes from your past come back to you? Not necessarily scenes, but I got guidance dreams that I had to make amends with. A friend / ex-boyfriend, really bright dream about doing that. Did I suddenly seem to understand everything in a lot of ways? I understood a lot about my life and I felt a lot of, next one. Did you have a feeling of peace or pleasantness? Absolutely. So much peace. Did I have a feeling of joy? Yes. Did you? Did you feel a sense of harmony or unity with the universe? Absolutely. And I did even have weird stuff happen with me with nature where I would see auras around trees, and every time I would be oh, so peaceful. Oh, and then I would see the aura around the tree or feel these things and then be oh my gosh, I'm losing it. But every time, obviously my stepdad, the shaman, helped me integrate all this, and then meeting all these NDEers. Did I see or feel surrounded by a brilliant light? I did see a brilliant light. Or I saw a beautiful light in my room. Were my senses more vivid than usual? Yeah. Did you seem to be aware of things going on elsewhere as if by extrasensory perception? So that's kind of happened after. I don't know if y'all have had this, but I don't think I'm alone in like if someone's talking or thinking about me, I kind of feel it. I think the point of I'm really kind of thinking the point of these NDEs is like they're opening the door for us to be more aware of us spiritually without dying. Because wouldn't that be great if we could all, like me, have beautiful awakenings, OBEs, STEs, all whatever, without dying? Did scenes from the future come to you? Yes. And so each ranking thing has a 0 for no. This is like 1 scenes from my personal future, 2 scenes from the world's future. So my experience, like during the 2 years, I did have that timeline where I saw a potential future. And then since my experience, I've had like things about the world's future, just a couple, but that's been really interesting. I don't have that all the time, but I'm very thankful whenever I do. And obviously, I always share it with y'all. Did I feel separated from my body? No, my experience brought me back to my body, but I was so out of my body after I was 13. I know I'm not alone in that either. Did you seem to enter some other unearthly world? I felt like I entered an unearthly world on the planet. That's why I love my experience. I saw so much light in myself and in everyone and in in nature and in everything. I really want us to all see that. And I want to see it again. Sometimes I do when I'm really peaceful. Did you seem to encounter a mystical being or presence or hear an unidentifiable voice? Yes, that would be the voice that spoke to me when I saw the light and the dream about the angel that I thought was going to be my boyfriend. Did I see deceased or religious spirits after my experience? Yes, I had a beautiful dream about Jesus. And yeah. And then did I come to a border or point of no return? Yes. Well, it was mostly like that experience ended when that dream that ended my experience, and then I had to start swimming uh, into the ocean by myself, and that was like the end point. It's interesting. Anyway, so have you had this happen? I'm going to link the Greyson Scale. Like, I think so many of us could relate to these experiences or have our own. And I think you don't have to have a near-death experience to know what peace and love feels like. It's just when people have these experiences and they come back and share, it helps us all awaken and get to know ourselves spiritually, which is, I hope, happening. I don't know. Let's see, the last thing I wanted to, so anyway, I think it's interesting that NDEs, they have a physical death, but my STE, spiritually transformative experience, I had like a spiritual death, and it led to the same thing. So I would love maybe for people to research that too. Maybe they already are. If you know about research like that, I'd love to know. It just really helps me as someone who comes from a like doctory, skeptical, sciencey family. To hear about research about this traumatic thing, because I'm tired. Like, yes, the shaman was helpful, but did I need to find like Google some stranger even though I had a dream about him? Like, it's kind of nice. It would be nice if like there was research about this too, and I didn't have to feel like strange. And I'm like going to back. I know I wasn't going to back alleys, but you know what I mean. I'm like, hello, help! I knew when it was happening that it was real. I just needed to know that I wasn't like losing my mind. And actually, this made me much more sane to have like a balanced spiritual life. Again, we're mind, body, and spirit. Anyway, the final little bit, it was like having met all my near-death experience friends / spiritual experiencer friends and y'all. There's like a really cool simpatico like connection vibe because a lot of people, it's like that same feeling of like you have a sense of all this light and love, and you've gone through having to stay on the planet with knowing that exists. That's like really comforting to me because I felt very alone in that. Like I literally just used to sit in the woods and be like, where did it go? And then when I moved back to New Orleans, I would sit by the river when I was still thinking, I was like, why can't I just like find this light? Now I know it's like through the heart. Um, uh, but anyway, and anyways, you can do things to see it more, but like I also wasn't supposed to be escaping the planet. Anyway, it's nice to meet people that understand that. Also, it was really like IANS, the conference is really cool because everyone's pretty psychic, everyone's really sensitive energetically, and that feels really cool. It feels like you can't really lie, not that you ever would lie, but It's just like everyone's just so keyed into everyone else, and I really love that about ions and being around, like, all the people that have been through something similar. It's also very fun, and in closing, I'll tell a cute story. So I've always had these psychic dreams since my spiritual experience started in 2006, and it's kinda like I've gone back and forth between I'm gonna tell someone I had a dream about them or I'm not, and it's always usually, like, I can tell when it's a psychic dream because there's just a lot of light, or you could call it a precognitive dream or, um, a vision, I guess, or visitation, but anyway, there's just so much light, there's like a spotlight in my dream, and, uh I was like, "This is kinda weird, like, nobody I know is really having these," but at IANS, everyone has them. Not everyone, but a lot of people, and I just got a really sweet text this week from one of my NDE friends who had I was like, showed up in his dreams, and it was, like, really sweet because it was the kinda text I would send, but, like, not necessarily to one of my normie friends would be like, "You're being creepy." It's not creepy in Ian's world. We all do that. So anyway, I'd love to hear your perspective. Have you had a spiritual experience that would fit some of what happened on the Greyson scale? Um, I really believe we're getting to a place, I hope, of these kind of experiences being much more normalized. But not everyone needs to have like a big, big spiritual experience to know. The whole point was that I knew what love felt like. I felt how loved I was, and it was just in many ways very, very simple. And I think that's the big point is if you're trying to feel your heart and trying to feel love and feel peace, like you can really you can have which is the purpose, is to know that you're just more than a human. You're so, like, beautiful and loved and seen and cared for. And, I had been so far on the other side, I kinda needed, like, a big awakening, and it's like, I can tell you all about it. Anyway, thank you for being here. I hope that was helpful. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear about your own spiritual experiences and, your thoughts on the Grayson scale. I've been emailing with my web designer and my friend in Canada, and very soon that form will be available. But if you feel comfortable commenting, I'd love to hear and support you in your own journey, or email me too. Okay, love y'all. Bye. Oh, yeah, PS, don't forget to like my video if you like it. If you don't like it, don't unlike it. Just kidding. And subscribe if you're not subscribed. I do Thursday videos where I talk about things I've thought about in my spiritual journey. And then on Sundays, I tune into the angels that came to me during my spiritual experience and tell you what I hear. I love you to be a part of this. Love y'all. Bye.